So welcome to part 2 in this mini-series where we are getting Fastgen authentication up and running with inside our FlutterFlow application. Now in this particular episode we're going to focus on refresh tokens. Now these are important to our application because we need to use a refresh token to call back out to the Fastgen platform in order to return back a brand new token that we can use with inside our application to make sure that we keep a consistent and authenticated experience to our users. We need to try and do this in a seamless way as well. So this particular video shows you one technique in order to be able to do that. We're also going to call out to Fastgen, to an API, to retrieve back some data from our Fastgen database just to prove that the authenticated side of our application is working as we would like. Now please do check the links in the description because there is the sample project which you can download and you can clone and you can use that yourself as your starter to then start building your applications with inside the Fastgen platform within FlutterFlow, of course. So without further ado, let's get into the video and into part 2. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is introduce a brand new API call called refresh token. Now, I'll talk more about how this actually works when we start to implement it within FlutterFlow and its use, but we're just going to set the API endpoint up first. So with inside the API call section, just move into the Fastgen auth and hit add API call, and we're just going to call this one refresh token. Now this is going to be a post request here, so just choose post here, and the name that we're going to actually change this to here is just going to be auth, and then we're going to say session, and this is refresh. Now this is the specific location for your project within inside the Fastgen platform, which is going to allow us to refresh this token. Now in order for us to refresh a token, we need to pass in a specific header within inside this particular request. Okay, so let's just choose the add header option here, and we're just going to type in authorization with a Z like that, authorization, and then colon, and then we're going to say bearer like that, and then we're just going to type in a square bracket and type in refresh token just like that. Okay, so authorization colon bearer space refresh token. Now we're going to set this refresh token variable up. Now this is the refresh token that we're actually storing with inside our application state. So move over to variables, choose add variable, and we're just going to type in here refresh token just like that, and we're just going to say it's type string, and that's all that we need to do. Now with inside the header there, you can see here this is the variable that we're actually using. We don't need to put a body in at this particular stage. There's no reason for us to put a body in. We don't need anything to actually pass into the Fastgen platform at this stage. And so pretty well much that is all that we need to do. Just hit the add call option, and that's good. We've got the refresh token here on the left hand side, so we're now ready to now set this up with inside our FlutterFlow application. So let's go and do that now. So with inside our FlutterFlow application, we need to come up with a way for us to be able to determine whether our token that we've actually stored that's been provided from the Fastgen platform has actually expired. If it has expired, if it's over an hour in its age, then we need to go back to the Fastgen platform and then provide a brand new token back to our application. Now the whole idea of these tokens and their short life is really just to maintain a good level of high security for our application. So the way that we do that, and the way that we're going to do it inside our FlutterFlow application is we're going to use an action block to actually do the actual work for us. Okay, so every time that we go to make a call into the Fastgen platform, so we're going to create an API there in a moment, but every time we make a call into the API platform, we're going to want to make sure that the token that we're going to pass over hasn't actually expired. Okay, so it's still within inside that hour range. If, and just before we make our API call, we determine that that token has actually expired, then we'll quickly go and get a brand new token, and then we'll carry out the API request into the Fastgen platform. Let me show you how we set all of that up now. So before we actually have a look at the implementation of the refresh token, let's actually have a look and see what this token actually means. Okay, so the actual token, this is the app state variable called token. This is the value that we're storing within that from the Fastgen platform. Looks something like this, a load of gobbledygook here on the left hand side, but this translates down to a series of values within inside the token. But there's one bit that we're really interested in, and there is this one hit down the bottom called expiry time. Now this expiry time here is 1 hour later than the actual time the actual token was actually created. Now if you remember back inside our application state variable, we're actually storing a create date and time. And what we need to do is we need to check to see if that time is still within 60 minutes of the actual expiry time. If it is, we don't need to refresh the token. But of course, if it exceeds 60 minutes, then we need to go back out to the Fastgen platform and get this brand new token back. And then we'll be doing the same checks again just before we invoke every API call. So I just wanted to set the kind of the scene here of the value that we're looking for. Let's have now look in FlutterFlow, and let's have a look at the custom function that allows us to do that check. So back inside FlutterFlow, I have selected the custom code option here on the left hand side, and I've got the is token expired custom function selected. And you can see here that this piece of code is pretty small. It looks a little bit complex, certainly if you're not a coder. I'm trying not to teach coding practices when we're talking about no code tooling and low code tooling to a certain degree. But what I've done is this actually was authored by ChatGPT. Actually, I just kind of told ChatGPT what I'm actually looking for, and it pretty well much created the code for me. Now, really, all this is doing is passing in the token. This is the token that is provided that you just saw previously. And what I'm really doing is I'm delving deeper into the actual token itself. I'm pulling out the expiry time, and I'm checking to see if the last token date, now this is the date and time that was stored within inside our app state variable. I'm just trying to see if it's actually within inside 60 minutes. Okay, if it's not expired, okay, so if it falls within inside the 60 minutes, it's going to return a false. If the actual token has expired, it's gone past 60 minutes, then it will turn true that the token has actually expired. Now, I need to do this check at the very, very beginning. Of course, I can then carry out those two different paths depending on the result of this particular function. But there you go. You don't need to know too much about this particular function. There is there as a support in order for us to work out whether our actual token has expired or not. Okay, so now we need to create a global action block. Now, this action block is what we're going to make available to the whole of our application called refresh token. We want to be able to call into it at any particular point. So anywhere within inside your FlutterFlow application, if you then move over to the right-hand side and just choose the actions and then click on the action blocks option, you've got a choice here to do app level or page level. Now, of course, we want this to be globally through our application. So make sure you choose app level and choose create action block. Now, let's give our action block a name. So I'm just going to call this refresh token, hit create, and then we're into this very, very familiar screen now where we can build out the actions. So the first one that we're going to create is an add conditional action. Just choose that. And this, of course, is where we're now going to choose to call out to our custom function to do that particular check. We're going to pass in some values, check to see if it's true or false. And then, of course, we can go down the route that we need to. So just choose a single condition here. The first value we're going to choose here is going to be our custom function. So just move down to custom functions and choose the only one that we got there called is token expired. And then now we need to pass in the token. These are the two app state variables we need to pass in the values of. So here with inside the token, just choose the value selector there, move to the application state and choose the token. Make sure you choose token and not refresh token. So just choose token, and then here on the date and time, let's move down to app state as well, and let's just pull out the token create date and just hit confirm. And that's all that we need to do. Just hit confirm there. Now we need to say, is this equal to true or false? Has the token expired? If it's true, then we'll go down one route. If it's false, we'll go down another. So just choose the second value, choose value, say specific value, and we want to select this to be true. So hit confirm. So we know that if our token has expired, we're going to go down here. If it's false, we're not going to want to do anything whatsoever. Okay, we want our application to continue doing what it was going to do. Okay, so now what we need to do is now we need to add in our API call. So just press the little plus there, hit add action. Let's choose API here, choose API call. Let's choose the group, the Fastgen auth, and we're going to want to then select the refresh token option. Now we're going to want to pass in our variable to this, so choose add additional variable, just select that, and of course we're going to pass in our refresh token variable. And the value of that is going to be from our application state, and it's going to be the refresh token. So of course, once we've actually done that, we can hit the little plus here. So we know if we're in a positive route here, if we know that we need to refresh the token, now we need to now reset those values back that we have been doing previously in other API calls. Okay, so just choose the add action here. So very similar to what we did in the login and the create screen. We're now going to update the app state here. So just choose update app state, and let's just set the fields, and we're going to choose the token. So with inside here, we just need to do exactly the same thing as we did before. Just choose set value, and then down the value to set here, we're going to go to the actual response back. Where are you? The action outputs. There we go. API result. Let's go here. JSON body, JSON path, and here we're just going to set the access a token like so. Hit confirm. We need to do the same thing here as well on the refresh token. Let's set the value. Let's go here. Let's go to the actual outputs here. JSON body here. Refresh token. There we go. Hit confirm. Okay. So this time we just need to set the actual token create date. We don't actually need to set the user ID because the user ID is already persisted within inside our application. So but we just want to set the value now of the actual of the refresh token. So this is the time that our token gets refreshed. So we know that we can then use this again as our 60-minute check. So just move down to the global properties here. Just choose the current time and hit confirm. And down here, just make sure we've got rebuild all pages on. So that is good for us to go. So that's great. So what that's going to basically do then is it's going to do everything that we need to do. We go down this particular direction here. We know that we're going to get these values reset, and then we can let our application continue doing its thing. But of course, if we actually are actually failing at this particular point, if we can't actually, for whatever reason, be able to get this refresh token, then we're going to need to redirect our users back to the login screen. So let's just choose that. Let's hit add action here, navigate to, and then we're just going to say a login. So if all else fails, send them back to the login page. We don't want to leave them in limbo. That's all that we need to do. So that is our refresh token action block all created. Let's now consider how we're now going to get this to work. So what we now need to do is just for this particular sample application, I'm going to go back over to Fastgen. I'm going to create a very, very simple database table. And then of course, what we'll do is we'll then try to retrieve those results back within inside our application, but we'll add in the refresh token there at the beginning before we make that API call. So let's move over to Fastgen and let's do that now. So here we are then back on the Fastgen platform. Now we need to do two things. The first thing that we're going to do is create a database table to contain just some dummy data for us. Then we're going to create an API call within inside this particular application for allow us to then pull that data outside of our database and make it available to our FlutterFlow application. So the first thing that we're going to do is move over to the left hand side to the database. Let's create a brand new table, hit the create table. We need to give our table a name. So I'm just going to call it books like that. And I'm going to give it some columns here. I'm going to call the first one just title, and I'm going to just give the other one a name of description. That's all that we need to do. Hit the create table, and I'm just going to create some table rows in here now. Test title 1. I'm just going to put some dummy data in there. And I'm just going to create a few more rows as well for good measure. Just hit enter. So there we go. I've just created 3 rows in this table, very, very basic with some details, and we'll pull that into FlutterFlow very shortly. So now we need to move over to API. So just choose the API option here, and we're going to create a new get API route. Okay, so just choose the get option here, and now we can select the API route. Just choose that. Now we're going to give this a simple name. We're just going to call this one get books on the actual path there, and then the name is just going to call this get books, just like that. Now authentication, we're going to keep this one actually toggled off because this means we now need to be authenticated in order to actually call this API to obviously then get the result back, which is good. The validation we need to worry about, that's everything that we need to do here. Just say save there. Now that's our entry point. Now you can see up the top here we've got our URL called get books. It's a get request. So we now need to make this database query. We now need to call out to our database and actually return some data. So on the right hand side here, choose DB query. Let's just drop that in here. Let's just select that. Let's give it a name. We're going to call this one get books, and then we're going to go to configure query. Now this is where you need to have some kind of familiarization with SQL. Okay, simple. There's loads of courses out on the web on how to do simple database operations. So do have a look at those because it really will help you out. But if you remember, we created this table called books. So I'm just going to select all of the data from that. I'm going to say select star from, and then books there. And that is literally all I'm going to do. I'm just going to test the query here just to make sure I've got my syntax all right. You can see here I've got some sample data come back. So things are looking pretty good for us. Hit save changes. And that's all that we need to do. So if I just hit the save there. And finally, I need to then return that data back to my FlutterFlow application. That's quite simply done. So I'm going to add a success in here. Let's just drag that in there. Let's go to the success. Let's give this a name of books result, just like that. Now within inside the curly braces here, let's type in an option called, just give it term results, and then here's, we're going to put another double quote in, and here in between these two double quotes, I'm just going to get the insert variable here, scroll down to the step here. This is the actual output from our database here. Just select that, but I'm just going to change this to results like that. Okay, so that gives us all of access to the data that we've got returned back. So just hit save, and that should be all that we need to do. So one final step, we need to actually deploy this now. So just hit the deploy option here in the bottom right hand corner, just hit deploy to go live, and that route is now available to our FlutterFlow application. So we can now move over to FlutterFlow and start getting this set up. So here we are then back in FlutterFlow. Let's create a brand new group for all of our general sort of Fastgen API requests. So the first thing we're going to do is just copy this here. This is our base URL that we use with inside the auth. We're going to use that again, hit the add here. Let's create an API group. Let's now just paste that URL in here, and we're just going to call this one Fastgen, something like that. And that's all that we need to do. Hit the add group option, and then we can now start creating out the API calls to our Fastgen platform. So we're going to add the get books one in here. So just choose the add API call. This one we're just going to call get books, something like that. And then of course, if you go back into the Fastgen platform, you can see here, this is the URL that we need. So / get books. So we just need to go here and type in get books. Okay, so this is just a GET request because that's what we had configured with inside Fastgen. Now, of course, now this is going to likely be an authenticated request. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to add a header in here. So choose add header, and we are going to now do what we did very similar before, authorization and colon, and then we're going to do bearer. And then this is where we now need to put in the actual token. So just do square brackets and put token in there. And then we can go now with inside the variables, and we can say add variable. We're going to want to pass that token actually into this request. So just choose this as a string. That's all that we need to do. And that's as simple as it comes. That will pick up that token as a variable. And then when it makes that call out, it'll be passing that into the Fastgen platform. The Fastgen platform will then authenticate that particular request there. It will see that it's a legitimate request, and then hopefully then return back those results to our application. So that's all done. So that's good. So let's just hit the add a call option. We're all good to go. Let's go back now into the main part of FlutterFlow now, and let's hook up that particular request. So here we are then back on the main UI of FlutterFlow. This is the page one that we've got selected here. This is the sample page that we're going to use with inside this project just to show the data that we got coming out from the Fastgen application. So what we need to do is we need to create a state variable now on this particular page that's going to hold those books that come back from the API call. Let's go and do that. Let's just move over to the state management option here. Add the state variable, and we're just going to call this one books, and we'll go to the type, and we're just going to say that it's actually just JSON, and just hit confirm. That's all that we need to do. Now let's move over to the main part of it. Let's make sure we've got page one selected, move over to the actions, and then open up the action flow editor, and we need to add our first action. Now the first action that we need to call here is the actual refresh token action block that we created just a moment ago. So just choose the refresh token action block. That's it. That's all it needs to do. And then we can hit the little plus now, and we can do the add action. And this is where we can now make a call out to the API. So choose API call here, choose the group here, just choose Fastgen. And then we've got the get books is the only one that we got in there at the moment. So that's the one that gets selected. And of course the API result will come back there, and we can now move down here, and we can now start just simply grabbing hold of what comes back from the API call and then saving it to the actual state variable that we just created. So we're going to go over to the little plus here. Let's choose add action. Let's type in state here, and we're going to update the page state this time. So just choose update page state, and then we're going to go to add the fields, and we've got the books JSON. Just select that there, and of course we now need to say set value. We're going to say the value to set, and we're going to go down to the action output API result here, and go to JSON body, and then we're going to say JSON path, And then here, I think we just said it was called results, as in the output from our Fastgen. If we just move over to Fastgen here, we go to the book results here, and this is the results that we're going to pick up. So everything inside this is what we're going to now then display and store, should I say, with inside our page state variable. So just move over there, and that's called results, and just hit confirm. That's all that we need to do. So just hit close there. So now before we run this up, we just need to do one more thing, and that is we need to set the children up of our actual data columns. You can see here we've got a row, so each of these rows will be an individual one of our books. So on the data column we need to create some children. So just select that, move over to the children's option here, and we're just going to call our variable name book, so which is going to represent every single row within inside our actual list here. Just use the value here, move down to action outputs, and we're going to choose the API result response, and of course we're just going to choose JSON body there and just hit confirm. We're going to just say okay to this. Now we're going to get this kind of ghosted look here, so you can see now this is more of a dynamic sort of column here. Now of course in each of these rows here we now need to specify the title itself. We want to show the actual book title that we created from our Fastgen database, so just choose the little option selector there. Just move over to the book item, because that's the variable that we just created. Choose book item, choose the JSON path. Now of course this one is just dot title, because that was the title of our book there. And then of course the description, we just need to do something very, very similar here. Go to the book item, go to JSON path, and of course the column name of inside Fastgen was just called a description. Just hit confirm. So we should be now good to go now to fire this page up, and let's see how it works. Okay, so here I am now in test mode. I've filled in my credentials, hit the sign in, and now if I move over to the page one, oops, we've hit a problem. Okay, so there's a couple of little issues that we've actually got to correct now in some previous pieces that we've actually done. Let me show you where they are. If we move over to the Fastgen platform, under book results, there is actually a little typo here. Instead of actually saying a results, it should actually just be results. So just change that and then hit save, and then hit the little deploy button just down there and say deploy to live. So that should all now be available to you. Now there's one other little problem that I've actually admitted to do, and that is I need to also pass the token within inside our FlutterFlow application. So if I move over to actions, choose the open, and if I go to the actual API call, one thing I forgot to do is actually set the actual token that you need to also pass in with all of your requests, because this obviously is an authenticator request. So I've in my excitement previously I didn't actually add that in, so let's just hit token. Let's go into the application state, and let's just choose the token itself. That's all that we need to do. Now if I go back into test mode here, let's just do an instant reload. There we go. So I'm on the home page, hit the page one, and then magic, we then see the data results that come back. So that's really good. So as you saw there, as I was kind of hopping to that particular page, we still got this kind of horrible red kind of message come up. Now the reason why that's actually happening is because we're trying to show the visibility of contents within inside our list that isn't actually there at that particular point. So we need to make a little slight tweak and move over to the conditional visibility, and let's make sure that those panels don't actually get displayed until that data has actually been retrieved back from the server. Okay, so let's move over to the list container here. So this is the container that's kind of encapsulating all of the data that we got coming back. If I just move over to the conditional here, just choose conditional. Let's set this here. So let's go to the conditions and say single condition, and then we'll say first value is the actual page state here. So we can say page state, and we say books, and then we can then say confirm, and then here we can just say is set. So just set that and then hit confirm. Now if I now go back here and do a reload, so there we go. So we hit page one, and there it is. So there's a little delay there, and then our data then is coming into our application. So you can see that it's all working really, really good. And that's how we get data very, very simply out of the Fastgen platform. So just by way of recap then, whenever you are making any API calls throughout the whole of your application using Fastgen, make sure that you include this action block here, the refresh token one, just before you then make that particular request, because this will then do all of that heavy lifting for you. Now, without doing an action block, you'd have had to have handled all of the refreshing with inside this particular API call. You'd be going down into different conditionals, then you would have had a struggle to kind of get back up and to replay the API API request. So just bear that one in mind. So this is a very, very effective solution in terms of actually making sure that your token is valid before the API request takes place. So I also highly recommend that you look at the Fastgen documentation as well. There's a bit down here on authentication, gives you some guiding sort of principles in terms of the way that they've kind of implemented there. You can see here some of the examples that we've kind of implemented with inside our FlutterFlow application. So it's well worth having a read. It's a little bit lightweight at the moment, but of course, depending when you're watching this, then chances are this would have been a lot more sort of heavily sort of edited and further information available to you. So bear that one in mind as well. And if you wanted to use API token protection as well, so if you wanted to generate an API key with inside your Fastgen application, you can actually use the API key as well as a token, but of course then you don't get the same level of user authentication that we've actually added into our FlutterFlow example. So remember, there is so much more to the Fastgen platform as well. I'm really, really excited to cover it more on my channel in the future. We're going to be creating some real world applications. So please do subscribe. Please do like, of course, all the videos as well, because it really does help the channel. It's well worth getting your Fastgen account set up. And of course, have a good read of their website. See what sort of power it brings to your own products that you're thinking of building as well. So yeah, until the next video, I'll see you soon.